we have to talk about Doug Wilson. Because if you're looking for like a Christian cult in the United States, or at least one that's really close to being one, you'd be hard pressed to look any further than Moscow, Idaho, which is the home of Pastor Doug Wilson and his Christ Church. This is a place that kind of made a lot of headlines for all the wrong reasons uh, during the pandemic. For me, that's where I started reading about them a lot more. I'll show you a tweet that caught a lot of people's attention. This is from June 30th, 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. Everything shut down, no vaccines available. And this is a tweet: about 1,000 people attended a Christchurch joint service Sunday morning at this field house in Moscow. These people held a 1,000-person gathering when all the rest of us responsible people were like, I can't have a birthday party with my 5 closest friends because that would be dangerous. These idiots were like, 1,000 people? You don't need masks, just show up. We'll have church. This is what they were doing during the pandemic. This is Doug Wilson's church. Later on, when their city had COVID restrictions, they started protesting outside the city and saying, no, yeah, go ahead, arrest us. We're just trying to pray, begging police officers to like make martyrs of them. So this is also Doug Wilson's church. I was trying to figure out what else can I share with you about Doug Wilson's church that would really give you an idea of what these people are like. Well, here's a guy who I believe worked for the church. This is what he posted on Twitter in October of 2020. A friendly reminder. Brothers, a friendly reminder for elections. Make sure your wife votes exactly as you do. Control her vote. Why would she have a mind of her own? And when people pushed back on that, this is what he said. Hey, I'm serious about this. The husband is responsible for how his wife votes. He should not be abusive or a jerk about this, and he should seek counsel from his wife on elections. But at the end of the day, he's responsible. Tell your woman how to vote. That's a guy who works for Doug Wilson. That's the type of people we're dealing with. Oh, wait, I'm not done. Let me tell you more about Doug Wilson because he's a horrible person. This is a Q&A he did. I'm just going to point you to a question and answer because he usually goes through like 20, 30 questions in one of these things. Here, how's this? Do you think supporting same-sex marriage is a more serious problem than supporting slavery? Yes, far more serious. What am I supposed to do with this, you guys? Supporting same-sex marriage, so much worse than slavery, apparently. And there's one more, and this is just, oh my God, this guy is creepy as hell. This is a whole article he wrote on why Christian women are prettier. And let's read through one paragraph of this. I make these observations not as some kind of creepy journalist, but simply as someone with eyes in his head. I travel a good bit, spending time in airports and the like. And I've also done hard time at Christian conferences, staring at the ladies. Having been in this place, I am in good position to state that there's a marked difference between Christian women and women in the general population. Christian women are a lot prettier, which is the creepiest ass thing Pastor has ever written. This is weird. By the way, some of you may be wondering, Doug Wilson, that name sounds familiar. Didn't he do a debate with Christopher Hitchens? And there was a whole movie about it. Yes, there was. That was a while ago. I think the movie was called Collision. It's, I'm sure, online somewhere. But that is Doug Wilson's church as well. Christopher Hitchens liked to debate. Doug Wilson likes to debate people. This is also what they do here. And there was one other thing I wanted to show you. Here we go. Yeah, this is the part I wanted to share with you. There was an article in the on the website Vice, and they basically went into Christchurch's culture of abuse and social control. And look at this paragraph right here. Vice has interviewed 12 former and current church members, and don't worry about the word ex-kirkers. That involves like someone who worked for the church or the ministry a while back. But what they say at the end here, They describe a punitive community in which women are told they must defer to church leaders and cannot say no to their husbands. Men are taught to strictly control their homes, and those who speak out can be isolated and harassed. So, of course, the men have to tell their women how to vote. That's how it works in this place. So, all of that is a reminder of like who this guy is. That's Doug Wilson. That is his church. It's a really messed up place. Um, you should also know the church has about, as of a few years ago, like 900 members in a town of about 25,000 people. So they're not quite there where they can outnumber everybody, vote their people into positions of power, but it's not nothing. So I bring all this up to tell you that Doug Wilson did an interview recently. Guess who he did an interview with? He did it with this guy, Tucker Carlson. I did an interview with Tucker Carlson, and the caption on Tucker Carlson's tweet there, Pastor Doug Wilson is the Christian nationalist they warned you about. And I think that's supposed to make him look good, I think, even though obviously that's a horrible thing. But no kidding, Doug Wilson is a Christian nationalist. He wants Christianity to take over everything. And they did an interview together, and I'm not going to play it for you because screw Tucker Carlson. But I did want to show you one thing. This was found by Right Wing Watch because after that interview went public, Doug Wilson did another series of Q&A, the sort of Q&A where he likes to say slavery is fine relative to gay people. So he was doing one of those question and answer sessions. And he basically tried explaining to his followers, like, you guys, I'm not a Christian nationalist. I don't want the United States to be declared a theocracy or anything like that. I don't want to force my religion on everyone else. However, he also said things would be way better for everybody if Christianity were forced upon them. He said things would be way better than what we are dealing with now if the United States was, at least on paper, declared a Christian nation, or the laws were like steeped in the foundation of Christian nationalism. Let me play you this clip. It's about a minute long because the thing that this made me laugh at first, he actually had ways of making it a Christian nation that have no basis in reality. He's going to name 3 ways we could just magically turn the US into a Christian nation like that if we wanted to. And they're all insane. So let me play this for you and you could see it. And then we'll talk about it.
So if we are not to have an established church at the federal level or established churches at the state level, in what way could America ever be considered a Christian nation? This could be done in various ways. The president could issue a proclamation that acknowledged that Jesus rose from the dead, and Congress could authorize the funds to have that proclamation printed and bound, read in all the schools, and posted in all the federal courthouses. That could be fun. The Supreme Court could take up a new religious liberty case, ideally one with Jack Phillips in it, and in their decision they could reaffirm and reboot the decision of the Supreme Court in the 1892 Holy Trinity versus the United States case, in which the court determined that the United States was in fact a Christian nation, and had been such from the beginning. Or the Apostles' Creed could be incorporated into the Constitution. None of these actions would establish a particular Christian denomination as being the mascot of the government.
Everything about that is dumb. First of all, he's basically saying we're not trying to push Lutheranism on everybody. We're just saying just declare it's a Christian nation. Everyone's cool with that, so it wouldn't be offensive. It wouldn't violate the separation of church and state or whatever it is. Like, no, saying Christianity, we're a Christian country, that's quite literally establishing a religion. It doesn't matter if you pick a denomination. But what was the first thing he said? He said, why don't we just have the president issue a proclamation saying, quote, Jesus rose from the dead, and Congress could just have it printed and bound and read in all the schools and posted in all the courthouses. Just like that. Just have a thing, Jesus rose from the dead. Everyone would just have to see it everywhere, and then everything would be cool. Like, you can't do that with crosses. You can't do that with Bible verses, but he thinks like if we just say it and put the government stamp of approval on it, haha, we win, and then something. I don't know what he thinks will happen if I have to walk into a courthouse and see that, but he thinks everything will get better somehow. He also said we could just have the Supreme Court say in a decision, it's a Christian nation and has been from the beginning, as if when this Supreme Court says something, everyone just takes it as gospel truth. Pun intended. Like, no, no one's taken the Supreme Court seriously at all. Yeah, we're a nation of laws, but it doesn't mean you have to respect what the justices are saying. And the idea that they could just lie about our history and then just stick it in writing and then everyone will believe it. Guess what? The Supreme Court has literally issued decisions that we've come to ignore, or overturn decades, centuries later, whether it's like Dred Scott or anything like that. So it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court does. And then he says the Apostles' Creed could be incorporated into the Constitution. In case you're not familiar, let me show you the Apostles' Creed. Here we go. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. This goes on for a while with a bunch of biblical BS. How the hell do you incorporate that into the Constitution? Like with an amendment that 75% of states have to agree to? You think blue states are going to go along with this? You can't get that in the Constitution. I don't know how you get the idea of that in the Constitution. I don't know how you think you can amend the Constitution at this point or change it or like make an addition somehow. What is he? I don't know what he's going for. But he basically says all of these things should be fine because we're just declaring it to be a Christian nation and not a particular Christian denomination. So it's all fine. Like, no, we shouldn't have In God We Trust in public schools and courthouses either, for what it's worth. But like, I think this is where he's getting it from, because he's not pulling these out of his ass entirely. I think where he's getting this from is he's saying, we did that with In God We Trust. We just made it the motto. And because it's the motto, you can use that as justification to put it up everywhere, which is true, except In God We Trust doesn't even mention Christianity. He wants to mention Christianity, so it goes further than that. But the other thing is, even if In God We Trust is on our money and, Under God is in the pledge and In God We Trust is in some schools and courthouses, what has that done to make our society better? If anything, it's just made it more divisive because a lot of people, more and more people, don't believe in any of that bullshit. So it's not like it makes it better. Why would taking a more extreme statement of Christianity, why would that make things even better? It wouldn't. So that's dumb. But I think that's where he's getting this from. I would love to say that his idea goes too far, but conservative justices are all over the place. Who knows if they would let it slide? Honestly, it's also hard to believe the Supreme Court, a majority of this Supreme Court, would go along with a Christian nation statement, because that would undercut other arguments they've made that were radical enough about how, like, local governments could allow a giant Christian cross to remain on public property, not because it's religious, but because it's been there a long time. It's tradition. Their whole argument is, no, we're not allowing this because of religion. We're allowing it for another reason. If they come back and say, oh yeah, we can declare it a Christian nation, they're undercutting their own legitimacy, which, fine, they should. I mean, and the idea that you're going to put an over-the-top religious text in the Constitution makes no sense at all. So the point is, Doug Wilson, he is a Christian nationalist, whether he likes that phrase or not. He wants the country to function as a theocracy, even if he's not using that word. And he's selling this harmful bullshit to his gullible followers, even though the process to get there defies all logic. Later in the video, he also said things like he could be pushed away from Christian nationalism, or at least the terminology, if, for example, advocates did something stupid, like if so-called Christian nationalists blew up the Washington Monument or said things that were anti-Semitic, which, by the way, they have, then, of course, he would not be a Christian nationalist. But he says that like he's a good actor in and of itself. Like, I'm a good guy. I'm trying to do the right thing here. He's not. He's a religious cultish leader who has pushed people to make awful, sometimes life-threatening decisions about their own lives when it comes to like COVID masking and things like that and not wearing it. So Christian nationalism, bad enough on its own, but decent Christians ought to reject it for no other reason than because Doug Wilson is apparently all for it. And the best thing you could do is run the hell away from Doug Wilson. I'm going to stop there. Let's take any other questions. Otherwise, I might be done for the night. Is he the guy who said husbands should be able to have their wives' votes? Doug Wilson is not the guy who said that, but it was a guy who worked for Doug Wilson. It is entirely possible Doug Wilson has said that, but I did not find that. Does he think that the difference between religions is the denomination? Yes. Yeah, like I think he's one of those guys who's like, Catholics, they're weird. I'm a Christian where everything makes logical sense. I think that's where I think he believes that.